Hey everybody, Dave Whitley here. Welcome back to the Advancing Man Project podcast. Today I have my friend Mark Limbaga on the show, and we were talking right before I hit record. We've both been involved in strength and kettlebell related things for about 15 years or so, and our paths have never actually crossed in person. We've never actually sat down and had a conversation with each other, but we've messaged back and forth and we've had correspondence back and forth. So I kind of feel like this is one of those cases where I know you, but we've never met, sort of thing. So it's really cool to have you on the show, and looking forward to talking to you a little bit. Mark is based in the Philippines. Like I said, he's been in the fitness industry since about 2006. He's a workshop presenter. He's a movement enthusiast. In the kettlebell world, people call him Uncle Mark, which is endearing to me because back in the old days, they used to call me Uncle Tamer. So that's fun. Currently helps people in their 30s and up unlock their potential physically and otherwise. He's a husband and he's a father of a son who is 6 years old, a few months older than my son, which is pretty cool that we've got kids that are the same age. And later on, we'll talk about where you can get in touch with him, where you can find him. But he's all over the social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, that sort of stuff. Mark, I appreciate you being on the show, and it's good to see you face to face and have a real life conversation with you.
Well, thanks for having me, and it's great that we finally got to catch each other, even though it's online. But let's make it
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, we're at a 14 or 15 hour time difference right now. So it's the wonders of modern technology. It's a really cool thing. And we're recording this the day after the great Facebook crash of 2024. So I'm glad that the technology is up and running. So I wanted to ask you just straight out of the gate. We all grow up with an idea of what it means to be a dad, and then we become a dad. And there's a lot of things that aren't the way that we thought they would be. I'm very fond of saying that becoming a father is the biggest personal development journey that I did not know that I was signing up for. You have been involved in the physical side of transformation, building strength, all that sort of stuff. Talk to me a little bit about how becoming a father has affected you, and how you were brought up versus how you want to bring your son up in the world that we live in now.
Good question. So you're in your 50s, is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, so I'm in my 40s, and so we both were brought up by boomer parents, right?
Yep.
And the way they raised us is totally different from like the generation now. So one of the things I noticed is that nowadays my wife loves using the term gentle parenting.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer using the term the kite style of parenting. So what does that mean? That means that you want the kite to fly as high as they can. They can take flight, right? But at times they get uh, blown by the wind in the wrong direction. So you just like need to tug them back so they're back on track, right? So it's more of like learning how to communicate with your kid and making them understand a lot of consequences, and that some of the decisions that they make, it could go either way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like so like in our household, since we are in a country that speaks more than one language, I I do it that I talk to him in English primarily, right? And then I often also tell him that if you're going to do that, that this is what might happen. So will you be okay with that? So I'm trying to like teach him about owning up to his choices as early as now.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like putting things are as black and white, but rather that he knows what are the potential outcomes. So that's how I've started. And yeah, since you mentioned what's it been like, I mean, I remember I jokingly say running on fumes on a daily basis for the first few years.
Mm-hmm.
So with barely getting enough sleep, having to wake up, since training your first client, and then of course we all know that that takes a lot of different forms of energy that gets sapped out of you, and then you're going to have to do it in a few minutes or an hour later. So you have that one thing you have to know is you really have to learn how to manage your stress.
Definitely, definitely. I love that you did that analogy about kite parenting. I hadn't thought of it that way, but I am also of the same frame of mind. We grew up in an era where, to throw out all the cliches, children should be seen and not heard. It was, and I grew up in a place where teachers paddled students in,
Hmm.
second, third grade.
Mm-hmm.
as a kid, and I decided early on that you throw out the term gentle parenting too. I think there's a huge misconception around what gentle parenting actually is,
Mm-hmm.
because when I talk to guys who are in the same age group and came up the same way that we do, and I mention gentle parenting, they seem to think that means just let the kid do whatever he wants to do, and he runs all over you and runs the show. And nothing could
Mm-hmm.
be further from the truth. For me and my approach with it, and it sounds like this is the same thing that you do, is I am very much into what I call regulated doses of risk, or
Mm-hmm.
like regulated doses of allowing my son to F around and find out, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
climbing that tree. I don't tell him to be careful. I say, hey, did you notice that that limb next to you that you are about to grab is rotten? And if you grab that, it will not hold you up and you'll fall out of the tree. What's your plan? Rather
Mm-hmm.
than be careful, no, don't go up there, or get down from there, but and if you don't, I'm going, I'm going to punish you this way. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like you said, it's like let them go out as far as they can, but then reel them back in when they need it. I really like that a lot. Is that similar to the way that you do things?
Yeah, I think because personally, one of the things that I uh really dislike uh up to now is when you feel like I'm being shackled.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured that let's see how I could use it as I'm raising a kid, like telling him, giving him limitations, teaching him boundaries. So like one of the ways we bond is funny because as I mentioned right before we started recording, is I often say that I'm a nerd at heart, and my kid is way more than a nerd at this age than I when I was his age. So we bond, we play video games like
Mm-hmm.
Roblox. But then I would say, okay, we can only play for 10 minutes. I'm gonna start the timer now, and I'm gonna show it to him so he sees it. And then when the timer goes off, I say, okay, whether you're done or not, we have you have to turn it off. And
Mm-hmm.
he's learning that, so he learns that we have to maximize every single moment. Or when we're doing his math homework, so because I tutor him in math, and I would say go back and check your home and cross check it just to make sure that you didn't miss anything. And he's realizing that. I said, I'm telling you this now. Do it right so you get it right. Because if you rush and you get it wrong, then you're gonna have to do it. You're gonna have spent twice that amount of time doing it. So why not just go slow and get it right the first time? So those are the things like I often teach him.
Definitely. What about from an emotional regulation point of view?
Mm,
Because I knew next to nothing about child brain development before I had a son, and then when we found out we were gonna have a child, I said, well, let's figure out how this brain actually develops. I did not know until we found out we were going to have a kid that the prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain
mhm,
that's responsible for problem solving and logic and reason and communication, all of that that sort of stuff, is fully developed until we're into our 20s. And so
mm,
coming to the point of realizing that trying to get a 3 or 4 year old to reason out certain things, they
mhm,
simply don't have the physical capacity for that. And so like dealing with emotional things,
mhm.
um it completely altered the way that I do that stuff. So talk to me about how you approach that stuff as dad.
So yeah, I mean, you basically took the words out of my mouth. That yeah, it's hard because of course they can't properly articulate it, right? So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you're gonna have to aid them. Like, how do you feel? What do you want? And I would say, what do you want? Just tell us what you want, and then we'll figure it out. Because I think the problem that we experience growing up is it's always about obeying, 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 right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I told you so. So it's now more of like, okay, tell me what you want, and then we'll figure it out. Because sometimes a kid is throwing a tantrum not because he's misbehaving, but because he's hungry. Maybe he's sleepy, he's tired, but he just couldn't figure it out right there and then. So you're gonna have to ask a few questions and probe, and then maybe later on they could actually figure it. Oh yeah, because like I remember that one time that while we were on vacation, and then he was really throwing a bad tantrum. Like it was really pushing all the buttons, so to speak.
Right.
And then yeah, when we look back at it, my wife said, "Yeah, I mean, I think that was just like his body really asking for a break because we were walking all day and we were meeting different people and we were in a different country, so everything just caught up to him,
Yeah.
and then that's why he like lost it. So yeah, I mean, when you look now that we look back at it, we say, yeah, it was a good it's a good lesson because we understand, yeah, there are things that they still can't properly elaborate, and there are things that when it happens to them, they get shocked. And it's not that they're misbehaving, it's just that they just can't explain how they're feeling.
Yes, and I believe in a lot of cases they have big feelings
Mm-hmm,
that they just don't they don't understand why they feel that way. And
mm-hmm,
if you don't understand why you feel something and you don't know how to feel differently, and you don't have that logical concept of time passing. You know,
yeah,
kids are magnificent spiritual teachers because they're always in the moment, right? They're
yeah,
always in this moment right now. And so if
mm-hmm,
you can imagine like the most frustrating or upsetting thing that could possibly happen to you as an adult and not understanding that this too shall pass,
yeah,
and like this is life, this is everything that's going on right now,
mm-hmm,
and it's not changing. It
mm-hmm,
makes sense that they could get very frustrated and they could wind up throwing tantrums and all of that because they just don't know how to handle that emotional energy. Um, an example, and I've talked about this before, is when my son was 3, we got him a new water bottle, a
mm-hmm,
metal water bottle, and it was blue, and it had from the Disney version of Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. It had
mm-hmm,
Spider-Man, Spin, and Ghost Spider on it. Really cool little
mm-hmm,
water bottle, and he was so proud of it. He loved it so much, and he was so excited. And within about 10 minutes of having it, literally within about 10, 15 minutes, he dropped it, and it put
mm-hmm,
this tiny, tiny little scratch on it. I mean, like you
mm-hmm,
really had to hold it and turn it and let the light hit it just right to see where the scratch hit was. But he knew that he scratched it, and he knew that he scratched it, that it was his fault, that like it was his mistake that wound up with that. And he
mm-hmm,
fell on the floor. He yelled, he cried, he screamed, "It's ruined. I can never use it again. I'm so
mm-hmm,
upset. I'm so mad."
mm-hmm,
And just, and I'm looking at that and I'm thinking about what you said earlier about being raised by boomer parents. My parents were not the typical boomers. They had
mm-hmm,
broken a lot of these generational cycles. Like I was never really spanked or anything like that
mm-hmm,
as a kid. So my parents took care of that for me. But there was a lot of stuff that they didn't know that they didn't know. And so I would get, punishments and various things that just,
yeah, mm-hmm,
oh, you broke the lawnmower. You don't get to watch TV.
yeah,
Those things
yeah,
aren't related to each other, right? So when my son's having this experience, I'm looking at him and I'm like, okay, what can I do to understand where he's coming from and to help him through this? And it
mm-hmm,
occurred to me that he had wanted this water bottle for a long time
mm-hmm,
for him, several days. Um,
mm-hmm,
and we got it for him and he had it. And it made me think about, let's imagine that as a grown up, you decided you wanted to get your dream car, whatever it is,
yeah,
Corvette, Tesla,
mm-hmm,
whatever, right? And
yeah,
you put all this time and effort and energy into acquiring it, and you finally get it, and you drive it off the lot, brand new from the dealership, and you stop at the store, the gas station, or whatever, and then you do something, you run into something, or
mm-hmm,
you open the door and hit something, and you put a
yeah,
tiny little scratch on it.
mm-hmm,
How would you feel? You'd be
yeah,
like, so frustrated because you just got it and you put all this time and effort into it and
mm-hmm,
you wanted it for so long. And now you feel that way, but you don't have the tools to regulate it.
yeah,
Of course you're gonna, if you're 3, you're gonna roll around on the floor. And
yeah,
now that water bottle is basically just got little blue chips of paint all over it. That's all that's left
mm-hmm,
because it's been through the ringer so much. But being
yeah,
able to put myself in his point of view and see it that way and be like, okay, I understand where he's coming from. And I also understand that for that to tell him, oh, it's no big deal or
mm-hmm,
stop crying or anything like that is
mm-hmm,
essentially like asking a baby that's 6 months old to run sprints. They just
yeah.
don't have the physical capacity to do it. Is that similar to the way that you approach things? Because like I said, we haven't talked about this on the front end. We're completely making this up as we go.
I
Tell
think
me.
that there are two letter A's that we can apply learning to: awareness and ability.
Hmm.
So they're number one, they're not aware, they lack it, right? So, and then so the second question is, do they have the ability? So apparently not. So I think that's where we, as the person who actually has better capacity of an understanding of the subject matter, that's where we will have to find a way to explain it to them that makes sense to them, right? So
Definitely.
I'll give you a good example. So I have this student. I jokingly say he's basically like one of the most neurotic people you ever meet. But he's a great person, really great person. So whenever you tell him something to do, he will follow it to a T, and he
Hmm.
could not veer off. And I was trying to teach him a new skill, and he was struggling with it. And then I said, okay, so these are the rules. Now, what I'm telling you is you don't have to follow it, and it's okay that you don't follow it. This is the gray area. So think of the gray area rather than it as being a prohibited area. No, it's a new set of rules that you could go, it's a new lane that you could try and explore. But the thing is, it's not as rigid as the white lane or the black lane. And then go through it and then see everything that goes there. It's basically like just a surprise lane. And then whatever you see there, take note of it and then apply it to what you know. And then eureka! Suddenly things made so much sense to them.
Right. Right.
So with going back to with kids, I mean, like with my kids, sometimes I'd explain to him some things. I try to uh explain it in a way that he understands. And what's actually nice now is that because he has friends in school and he's kind of like acting like a big brother. So I would often tell him that you have to what you're doing now, would you want your friends to see that behavior? Would how would you feel if what you're doing was done to you by this friend, that friend? So I would say, how would you want them to treat you? So I said, if that's how you would want them to treat you, why don't you treat us that way? And then it suddenly starts to make a lot more sense to him.
Yeah, that's a great way to start teaching and modeling empathy for kids for sure.
Mhm.
You said something earlier, and I want to circle back to this about the generation when we grew up. There was a heavy emphasis on the children obeying,
Yes.
and I'm in a lot of dads groups on social media and Facebook stuff,
Mhm.
moderator and some, and there are a lot of guys who are stuck in that same mentality, from the 60s and 70s. Um, and they've never stopped to question that. They've never wondered if that's the right way.
Mhm.
And um, I've come to realize recently that asserting your dominance to force a child to obey you is a very limited thing,
Mhm.
very very limited, because it feels like I'm being strong and I'm teaching the kid to be strong, right? That's what it
Mhm.
feels like, because it's aggressive and it's very
Yeah. Mhm.
very assertive, bordering on
Mhm.
aggressive. But the reality is, if my expectation is for my son to follow my directions, follow my orders, and obey me without question, what I'm really instilling in him is that if there is someone who is in a position of authority, do what they say, do not question it.
Mhm.
And that's an incredibly dangerous thing,
Mhm.
right? It takes it from a societal standpoint, that's how entire populations are oppressed and suppressed.
Mhm.
From an individual standpoint, that's how self-esteem is crushed, and how we wind
Mhm.
up with, grown men years later who are dealing with anxiety, depression, addiction,
Mhm.
not
Mhm.
understanding their sense of worth, not knowing who they
Mhm.
are. And I realized very, very recently that what we're looking for when the word obey gets thrown out is we're actually looking for cooperation.
Mhm.
And if I'm talking to you and we're trying to solve a problem, you and me as grown men, and
Mhm.
we have to cooperate to get the problem done, we're going
Mhm.
to we're going to get there much more faster and much more effectively if we respect each other, bounce ideas off each other, and consider
Mhm.
each other's point of view, than if one of us just comes in and says, no, this is my project, you do what I say.
Mhm.
Right. And so like talk a little bit about your experience on that of obedience versus cooperation with
Yeah.
your little one.
You actually well, let me just sidetrack a bit. So, like, I
Sure.
think you mentioned in the intro about me presenting. So, my uncle got given to me by one of my co-presenters, Reg. So she's the rose among the thorns because the three of us gents, and she's a lone lady. And then me being the eldest in the group, she would often like say, "Here you go again, Uncle Mark, with your horrible dad jokes." So it started from that. But and then what's nice is whenever we would be learning from each other, as keyword is learning, is we would like throw ideas and then we'll like see which one makes the most sense to the audience in front of us. And then sometimes, like last time we did a workshop, I said, "All right, why don't we mix things up? I normally teach this part. No, you teach it. You and then he teaches this, you teach that." And so it's more of the way since we see a different perspective, that gives us an opportunity to learn and also see like which ones fit best, right? Because when it comes to teaching, I often say uh, like instruction or cues have to fit like suits. If it doesn't fit you, it's not that it's a bad cue, or it's bad instruction. It's just not, maybe it's not fit for your learning style. So
Right.
but it might work for someone else. So put it in the drawer, but try something else and then go from there. So it's not, so when I say it's not really obedience, yeah, like you said it right, it's more of cooperation. Let's see, this is our objective, so uh let's root it in that. Let's focus on that. Begin with the end in mind. That's their objective, and then how we get there just isn't really as important at this point. Let's work together and then see how, learn along the way, how you learn, how you solve problems, how I solve problems, and we will find a middle ground so that we could work together and make it more efficient rather than just banging heads.
I love it. I absolutely love it. To that point, we're talking about obedience versus cooperation. We're talking about communicating with our kids. And I'm in one of those places right now where I've got like 4 or 5 different ideas that are trying to come out of my mouth all at the same
Mhm.
time. So I'm
Yep.
gonna back this one up with a story of something that literally happened yesterday, right?
Mhm.
Literally happened yesterday. One of the things that I see popping up in a lot of the Facebook groups is talk of children being disrespectful and or teaching children to respect their elders.
Mhm.
And very often that's approached from the point of view of I will force this child to respect me. And I'm like, or
Mhm.
I demand respect. Well,
Mhm.
I'm of the opinion that if you have to demand respect from someone, you probably don't deserve it. Right.
You took the words out of my mouth.
Yeah. Yeah. My child does not owe me anything, least of
Mhm.
all respect, if I'm trying to force him to respect me, right? Because
Mhm.
I want to teach him kindness and I want to teach
Mhm.
him autonomy, and forcing
Mhm.
him to obey me teaches neither one of those things. It
Mhm.
models an unwanted behavior for me. So yesterday we were doing something. Um, I forget exactly. We had a fort built and he was inside it, and I did something.
Mhm.
Um, and he responded back to me, and uh, the way that I spoke to him, it was like in urgency, right?
Mhm.
Wait, I remember exactly what it is. I remember exactly what I was just thinking of. But he had a stack of Uno
Mhm.
cards that he was carrying,
Mhm. Yeah.
and we were back and forth with, kind of playing and doing stuff with each other. And
Mhm.
I poked at him, kind of tickling, and he took the
Mhm.
cards and flung them up in the air and fell back and
Mhm.
did this like super dramatic 6-year-old fall down on the
Yeah.
floor. And he's playing the whole time. We're playing
Yeah.
back and forth.
Mhm.
And and uh and I laughed, and he says, "Okay, help me pick these up." And
Mhm.
I said, "You go ahead and pick them up. You threw them in the floor." And
Mhm.
I knew the instant that I said that I was, not that I was wrong for saying it, but I'm like, I'm saying that because I don't want to pick them up. And I knew
Mhm.
that the moment that I said it, and I'm like, oh, I kind of felt that. And he looks me dead in the eye and he says, "Daddy, if someone asks you for help, the kind thing to do is to help them." And I'm
Mhm.
like, you called me on it. You nailed
Yeah.
me on it right there. Yeah, and that's
Mhm.
what I'm talking about, right? If I was forcing obedience, then I'd be like, "No,
Mhm.
you pick them up because I said to, and you don't talk back to me or be disrespectful."
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
what I've done is even at this early age, is I've given him an environment where he feels safe enough to say,
Mhm.
"You're not walking your own talk, Dad,
Mhm.
because you tell me to be kind, and
Mhm.
then I'm asking you for something that I, in my 5-year-old mind, perceive as kindness,
Mhm.
and you're not doing it. And I'm going to point that out to you."
Mhm.
And I absolutely freaking love that he feels that safe and that he's that like emotionally aware to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what, kid, you're right. And so I helped him pick it up. And he
Mhm.
said, "I have an idea. I'll pick them up and hand them to you, and you straighten them out,
Mhm.
making sure that they were all facing the same way." And I said,
Yeah.
"That's great." And that's what we did. What sort of
Mhm.
stuff like that goes on with you with in
Yeah. So,
your life?
uh,
Curious.
uh, since this is where we stay, right next door are my wife's folks. So It's a very unique setup. So since we're uh helping take care of my mother-in-law because she got sick
Hmm.
um, a few years back, so just making sure that she's healthy. And well, the good thing is, I jokingly say, at least my kid grows up with his folks and he gets to see a set of his grandparents because my mom lives like 40 miles down south.
Hmm.
Anyway, so sometimes he'd be with his pappy, with his grandfather, and like if he wants to play or whatnot, I could you could hear him barging through, get dad, 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 and I go, yeah, what? Then he says, can we play now? So he knows it. Or sometimes when he just wants to bug me, like I'll be setting up my training area, he'd be coming in, and I say, oh, you shouldn't be moving, you shouldn't be in front of me when I'm training because if I let go of the weight and it hits you, I don't want you're gonna get hurt. I don't want it to. So if you want to be here, stay beside here and watch me here. And then sometimes he'd be like going in, chalking up his hands. Can you pick this up? And I say, not yet. You're not strong enough for that one yet. You get the lighter one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
or
cool.
like he'd be grabbing my whiteboard and he'd be, okay, you want to write? Get the pen. So I'm teaching him how to keep himself entertained and occupied without having to like be a disturbance.
That's
Because you
awesome.
know how kids are. They love kids love to fidget, and
Yeah.
the kids love to tinker with things.
They're-
So rather than say don't do that or what, you have to figure out a way to make them productive. So remember I was telling you about my student who's a counselor,
Mhm.
and then she said she's a really cool lady, and she has three sons, and all three sons have ADHD. But one of them was actually a class valedictorian in college. So go figure. The
Yeah.
fact that you have a condition and you did that means she raised them right. So one of the things I learned about having about someone having ADHD, I I know I have it, but I haven't been I haven't been diagnosed by a professional, but I know the symptoms. Is telling someone to not fidget is basically like a death sentence.
Sure.
So when it comes to my kid, because I know I hate it when someone say when I have to sit still. So I would find a way to use that and make him productive. So it's basically that it's like that. You just have to find a way that when they could use their energy in a good way, so that it doesn't become destructive. Because if they get angsty, they get bored. That's when not so good things can happen.
Yeah. Well, and I think you hit on a really important point there that affects even grown-ups, right? It's the old thing about if I tell you not to think about a pink gorilla, no matter what I say or
Yeah.
do not let a pink gorilla enter into your mind. And I just continue to tell you not to do this, not to do this. That's all
Mhm.
your mind is focused on. So if you're
Mhm.
telling someone um who fidgets not to fidget and it's something that's happening, occurring because they're a child and they don't have that regulation yet and you're telling them not to do it, you're literally going against nature when you're doing
Yeah.
that. So I think you bring up an important point that instead of just saying don't do this, what do you do instead? Right?
Hmm.
And the thing about chalking up, can I lift this? Well, don't lift that one. Go lift this other one over here. Don't stand in front of me while I'm doing this. Go stand over there because that's the safe place to be. And if we just tell
Hmm.
kids no, 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 no all the time, then it doesn't really. I believe it loses its effectiveness. And I saw a quote
Hmm. Yeah.
from some gentle parenting person on Instagram. I don't remember who it was, and I'll
Hmm.
I'll paraphrase this, but essentially it said that the more often we are willing to say yes to a
Hmm.
child, the more meaning our no will have when it's time to truly tell them
Hmm.
no, right?
Yeah. That
And
makes
and
makes sense.
and the way I took that is like real life examples for me is uh, as much as I can, I tell my son yes and let him do stuff, and we
Hmm.
we create that safe environment for him to figure stuff
Hmm.
out. But a couple of weeks ago, we were out somewhere and we're on the sidewalk, and you could see the truck,
Yeah.
in the parking lot over there. And he says,
Hmm.
"Daddy, can I run to the truck?" And I said, "No, because there's cars that go through here,
Hmm. Yeah.
and it's not safe. When we get to
Yeah.
the other side and there's no cars there, then you can run."
Hmm.
But if I had just been like, no, because I said so, I think that's why kids are like, okay, fuck you, I'm going to run,
Yeah.
because they're
Yeah.
they're
They would
looking
love
for
to
that
test their
autonomy.
limits.
Yeah, yeah, they're. It's not that they're testing your limits either. It's that they're just like trying to figure out what is the limit. not
Yeah,
just your limit.
exactly.
And when you learn not to take it personally, that
Hmm.
I am not in some sort of an intellectual
Hmm.
psychological battle of the wits with a 5-year-old.
Hmm.
That we're actually both on the same team trying to get to the same place, which is to grow
Yeah.
this into a well-adjusted adult. It just changes the
Hmm.
whole game, I think. And
Hmm.
I'm hoping that more and more people realize that. Um,
Yeah, it's a different approach because I mean, we are figuring out like how to get them on board with us, right? And at the
mhm.
same time, it's I don't know if you know who Jason Wilson is, but he's an
Mhm.
awesome author.
Yeah,
Love his stuff,
the
and I
martial
love
artist
what
guy
he
with the
said.
big white beard.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that guy,
Love
that
that
guy.
guy.
I mean, he for me, whenever I'd send like it's a videos of him to like my students, I say this is the tough love that I think many men should learn from because he can be firm, but at the same time you could still feel the compassion there. It's not just being strict, and he explains to his students, "I'm expecting you to do this,
Hmm.
so and this is what I want from you." Now it's okay if you're crying, just go through it. It's okay to cry, go, but you have to do it. And he's explaining that. So I think like the analogy he uses, you have to know how when to be the lion, when to be the lamb,
Right.
and it makes so much sense.
Agree completely. Agree completely. We both come from similar educational backgrounds as far as our strength training goes, and
Mhm,
our the principles that we learned of how to
mhm,
apply in strength and movement
mhm,
all the way around.
mhm,
Um, and I know from everything that I know about you, both your education and what I follow from social media and stuff, that your training business, when you interact with your clients for movement and strength and all that sort of
mhm,
stuff, is based in principle, and the
mhm.
methodology can change. It's the old principles never change, methods often do,
Yeah,
right? So, what is the
yeah.
method that supports the principle? Having said that, um, I believe that that is philosophically something that applies across the board, no matter what the endeavor is, especially
Mhm,
if we're going to be teaching something. So, what is what are your fundamental principles of fatherhood?
mhm. Well, for me, what my beliefs is that I would treat my son the way I would want to be treated. That's the first thing that I always focus on. And then I always focus on teaching him about the value of kindness. Number two, and I would say now I'm also slowly teaching him what it means to be respectful. And I would say also teaching him the value of putting in the work. If you want something, you work for it, you earn it. Not even if you know you could get it, you're still gonna get a lot more out of it when you work for it. Because and I told him one time because he was doing one of his homework and I said, look, you work for it, and when you're done, you could be that's something you could be proud of, and no one can take that away from you. So these things, and then say if someone doesn't know and you know, teach them.
Oh, I like that one. I like that one. If they, I'm actually making a note of that. If
Yeah.
someone doesn't know and teach
You
them.
know how it is like in when we were younger, if you didn't know something, you can get humiliated, you could get ridiculed, you could get scolded. But then it would have been a lot easier if someone said, "No, this is how you do it. Let me
Mhm.
let me see you try, and then I'm gonna walk you through it."
That's wonderful. That's beautiful. What is the biggest challenge you face as a dad?
As a
Particular.
dad, right now, it's just managing everything. Because as a dad and as a business person, you're juggling multiple plates at the same time.
What about in terms of, like you said, we were both brought up in that boomer parent generation as Generation X kids. What about in terms of breaking some of those cycles? What's the biggest challenge that you face with that?
The biggest challenge is sometimes you're gonna have to do something that goes against your intuition. I would say because I mean, subconsciously, a lot of the things that we saw are the things that we think are we do. So you have to catch yourself.
So like you're having to like be aware of your own programming, and if that programming doesn't match up with the way you want to
Yeah,
be now, you have to, yeah.
that's a challenge because like when I'm trying to teach my kid some things, I would often ask him, "Can you help?" I would often lead with, "I need your help. I'm gonna do this. Please help me."
Hmm.
So I'm making him see that he is important. That It's not saying that I can't do it. I can, but I would rather have him do it.
Mm,
I'd rather do it with him, so that way that he feels that he's getting involved.
I love it. I love it. You're in the physical health and strength business. Um, how do you and you're in a completely different country than me, so
Hmm.
you have a completely different culture that
Hmm.
you're living in over there. What is it like for men, and as far as like the mental health aspect of things with men? Because I know that some of the stuff that we grew up with is the whole boys don't cry and everything that goes along with that, and I'm very much an advocate for helping men realize that every unpleasant emotion that we have does not have to be expressed aggressively or as anger, right? Because there was we grew up in the stop crying before I give you something to cry about generation,
Yeah.
which essentially is
Hmm.
saying whatever you're feeling isn't valid, suppress it.
Hmm. Yeah.
So from a mental health standpoint, I'm curious, what is it like in the Philippines? What's your experience like with that, with grown
Hmm.
men, and how that affects the way that you do parenting related things?
But what's interesting here is a lot of the things you just said, it's also prevalent here, but the only major difference here is we don't have that much awareness as like say in the US. So we don't have like a lot of helplines if you're considering suicide. We don't get as much counseling as necessary. So I've had a very good friend who went through depression, and I'm really glad that he pulled out of it because as soon as he spotted his himself getting into his depressive state, he reached out to me, and I said, "Okay, whatever you need, you let me know, and we'll work through this together." And then I have a student, yeah, who he was in a very different environment than what he was used to, which caused him to have anxiety. And I said, if you have to go through therapy, go through it. And I also told him, when you talk to your counselor, when you talk to your therapist, if you feel that you're not getting your money's worth, it's okay to change. Just may not be a good fit. Because I was jokingly telling him back then that it seems that I'm the one who's asking the questions that your therapist should be asking you.
Right.
That should be
Right.
something. I said, yeah, I said, why do if you're paying him a good amount of money, well, I gladly accept that instead because I'm doing his job for him. But of course, I did that because that's part of as I jokingly say, because there was this guy who posted, "Oh, we're fitness trainers." Of course, and he said, of course, we often end up as confidence and counselors to our clients."
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, "I'm not going to say that. Oh, and I help my clients reach their goals." That everyone says that, but no. Here's the real thing. How do you deal with Pedro, who just got fired and he was expecting a raise because it's going to be his because his son's birthday is coming up. How and then he goes to you and so now he's gonna vent during the session. How do you deal with that? Or you deal with let's say Jane, who just went through a bad breakup with her boyfriend who was with her for 7 years.
Hmm.
So these are the things that happen in our daily lives when we train
Yep.
people.
Yep.
But a lot of people sweep under the rug, but they don't know. It's as they say, it comes with the territory.
Yeah, yeah. I had an online client that I worked with that we would, communicate back and forth with messenger or
Mhm.
text or whatever.
Mhm.
And um I would send, okay, this upcoming week do this, this, and this. And then I check in
Mhm.
the next day and
Mhm.
no answer. And then I check
Mhm.
in the next day, no
Mhm.
answer. And I check in the third day and the answer comes back, "Oh, I haven't done any of it." So, okay, what's going on here?
Mhm.
And it was like, well, just between you and me, my partner and I are having a really rough time, and
Mhm.
this relationship is probably going to end. And there are
Mhm.
children involved, and it's a lot. And I am just in a place where I'm done and I'm drained. And I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
thanks for telling me that. So instead of doing this, this, and this, I want you to go practice these breathing exercises. And I
Mhm.
want you to take some time out where you're, completely removed from everything and just sit with yourself and breathe and get your
Mhm.
nervous system and your body calm and
Mhm.
regulated so that you are not in a state of absolute freaking survival.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to do that for 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
That's your assignment, and report back to me and let me know how it goes. And so to be able to make a call like that in the middle of all that sort of stuff, yeah, you're absolutely right. People don't hire fitness professionals um, for the reasons that they believe they hire fitness professionals for.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get stronger. I want to lose weight. Okay, those are goals. Those aren't reasons, right? The reasons are, well, why do you want to get stronger? Why do you want to lose weight? What is it inside you that feels like the way that you are right now is not who you are
Mm-hmm.
actually supposed to be or who you could be? And those are the reasons. The goals we can take care of because that's math. That's stepwise stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The reasons behind it are the things that we have to be aware of, right? And physiologically, not much is changing. If like let's say that you came into the gym and I'm getting ready to train you, and you're like, I'm like, how you doing? You're like, man, I'm great. Everything's going fantastic. Got a great night's sleep. Diet's been on point. I feel energized. I ate well today. I'm ready. Let's go and crush this workout. I'm like, okay, Mark, let's go do it. And then you get a text, and it's your wife, and she says, call me. And so you're like, call me now. It's important. Give me just a minute. So you go call and you spend like 2 minutes on the phone, and you come back, and the conversation you have with your wife is like, Marquise is okay, but I have to tell you, he was climbing up this thing and he fell and he bumped his head, and I was really scared. And we're at the doctor and everything's fine, but I just wanted to give you an update on it. Go enjoy your workout. Are you still going to have the same workout?
Definitely not.
Absolutely not. Did anything actually change with you physically though?
No, but you're not in your headspace is different now. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And so as fitness pros, we have to be aware of that stuff, right? Um, and I think that there's absolutely a carryover in that to parenting as well, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if especially when we're looking at kids the age of ours, where that emotional regulation is a skill that's still in its very, very beginning
Mm-hmm.
developmental stages, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something that seems like no big deal to us, because really in the grand scheme of things, it's not a big deal. Like the water bottle in the car thing that we talked about earlier, we have to
Mm-hmm.
be able to meet them where they are. So like, do you see parallels between that as being a coach for grown-ups and being a parent?
Yes. In fact, a lot of my students actually have seen my kid grow up, like even through the pictures, and then they would often ask like, "How's he doing?" or whatnot, and I would s- I would apply a lot of the lessons I've learned, uh, teaching them, to raising my kid, and vice versa. And I mean, I would say I said that if not for some of these experiences, some of the things that I saw, I probably not wouldn't be as well equipped to handle. It's not that it's perfect, but at least I was somehow prepared.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we've talked a lot about, overcoming the stuff that we were programmed with and not passing it on. What advice do you offer to other dads who might
Mhm.
be navigating similar challenges like that? Like
Mm.
when the child does something and it hits them, and their initial programmed response is to go down a
Yeah.
path that they've said they're not going to go down. What's your advice to dads who are navigating those kind of challenges?
Well, the best advice I've ever gotten about parenting is there is no manual. You're going to learn a lot of things on the fly, but the first thing you have to do is you have often have to take a step back and then analyze the situation, because again, kids don't have the ability and the awareness to regulate their emotions. So you have to find, sometimes you don't even have to talk to them at all. You just have to hug them. Sometimes that's all, that's all that's needed. Sometimes you just have to distract them for the moment, and then when they're distracted, suddenly their emotions regulate by themselves, and then now you can get working. So it really depends on the kid. They all have different responses, so you're gonna what works for you when you parent Liam may not work for me when I parent Marquise, and what might not work for uh Johnny when he's parenting James. So we have to figure, it's about just understanding what's in front of you and then making the adjustments as you go.
Which is again very much like programming and coaching as a fitness professional, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, let's move into the rapid fire questions. Does that
Sure.
sound good to you? All
Yeah.
right. What is one useless talent that you have?
One useless talent that I have, I think you could say that, as I mentioned, I'm an anime fan. I probably could name like five or six protagonists of anime shows at the top of my head.
That's good. I have zero knowledge of anime beyond I'm drawing a blank on the name right now, but on my TikTok several years ago, I got compared to and requested by kids who were from some anime character who could rip a notch out of a deck of cards.
Hmm.
And if you say the name, I'll recognize it. And they're like, well, yeah, but can you do this? And I'm like, well, in fact, yes, I can. I'm like, well, that's not the way he does it. He just does it with his thumb like this. And I'm like,
Yeah,
yeah, okay, that's anime, but
yeah.
oh, I get it. What's a personal mantra or belief that you want to make sure you pass on to Marquise?
Oh, good question. So, uh, I would say suspend your defer or suspend your judgment,
Hmm.
manage manage expectations, always assume misinformation over malice.
Mm, I love that. Assume misinformation over malice. That's yes, yes, yeah. Because that's how we can not take things personally, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
Like if you're just having a bad day, that doesn't mean that you're out to get me. You're just
yeah,
having a bad day. And if you're
that's it.
rude
Yeah,
to me because you're having a bad day, I can forgive that because I've had bad days. I love that
yeah.
so much. Most valuable piece of advice you've ever received.
Uh, it's not always going to be sunny, but then at the same time, it's also not always going to be rainy.
Mm, very good. Um, favorite holiday.
Over here, okay. So I love the holiday season. The only thing I don't like about it is that that's when I don't have that much cash because that's when a lot of people are on training vacation. But I love the holiday season because you could see people trying to reconnect, people trying to get together. So that's what that and you would often like see people going out of their way just to get that certain present for a certain someone.
Mm, very cool. Favorite vacation spot.
Oh, okay. That's a tough one. Locally, so we love going to Subic Bay locally, but uh I have I did have a good time in Singapore last year when my wife and kid were there. So that was fun, but we'll see. But yeah, I'd say with locally, I'd still say with still stick Subic Bay just because it's a 2 hour drive from the metro.
Mm. David Lee Roth or Sammy Hagar?
Yes.
Good answer. Good answer. People who've heard me ask that question before know that I'm what I'm about to say, but my answer is always Edward. If you ask me that
Well,
question,
Eddie is the glue.
yeah, yeah. And then finally, share with me, Uncle Mark. Share with me your top tier number one, knock 'em dead every single time, best dad joke.
Oh, well, um, these are these are the principles. If you don't like them, I've got otters.
Oh,
Otters.
I got it. Oh, with a visual. I like that. For anybody that's not watching the video, it's just listening to the audio playback of this. The man literally just held up a stuffed toy of an otter. That's brilliant.
Yeah. Anyone who knows me knows that Marquise loves otters.
Very good. All right, cool. Well, if anybody wants to find you, they look for Mark Limbaga on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all those various places like that.
Yes, sir. That's right.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate you being on the show, and I'll make sure to get the links to those specific social media outlets to put in the show notes when we do this. Um, and that's all I've got for today. Thanks a bunch for being on here. This is Dave Whitley for the Advancing Man Project podcast. See you next time.